Hello, the mask is back, and we have honestly a pretty good card. All things considered, despite a couple good fights, really holding the fight card together, falling through like a Gabriel Bonfire and Randy Brown, although that was moved instead of falling through. Although I guess you could call it that. Point stands. It's uh, it got moved to a main event of another fight card, and Walter Walker, which should have actually been on the main card, for some reason it was on the prelims, versus Muhammad Usman because he's a drug cheat just like his brother. But let's move on. Otherwise, it's still a pretty good card despite the losses of a probably potentially goated Brazil card if it had those two fights on there. Simon Oliveira, and even Fiziev versus Charles maybe would have made it a little better too. But look, they scrambled together with a pretty good card, so I'm not going to complain. With what they have, you got to be excited, especially with legendary Polish decision, Mateusz Gamrot. Simon Oliveira, Luan Lacerda. I think Simon Oliveira has shown some underrated kicks. I know that he's been chinned a lot, like he's getting knocked out. Doesn't seem like he has a very good chin, pretty chinny, but he is losing to really good guys. Like one of these guys, David Martinez, right now in the rankings. This guy, Daniel Marcos. I said this guy because like I was like thinking of the name and I was like, you know what? It's actually easier if I just click it. But I thought of it in the exact moment that I clicked it. So I know who he is, okay? Daniel Marcos pretty much just outside the rankings, arguably. Tony Gravely, I think he's coming off a win. He's not the most high level, but hey, it's 3 years, 8 months ago. It's not the worst loss anyway. Damon Blackshear and Cody Stamen. Damon's not the worst loss. He's certainly not the best. I mean, we saw him get 30-27 pieced up by Davy Grant. And Cody Stamen, honestly, is super overrated as a win. I used to be one of those who would overrate him, but looking back, aside from the moment that he was ranked 25 to Marab, he has never had real success. He has never had a really wowing performance. And aside from that, Luan Lacerda, I guess, has some really just whatever records on his resume outside the UFC. He has a 9-2 there, that's okay. But I like the reach advantage despite him being shorter from Simon Oliveira. He doesn't actually look that much shorter in the weigh-ins. I don't know why it says there's a 3-inch height advantage for Luan. I think he's going to have to wrestle, but I don't think that it's good enough to exploit that weakness that Simon Oliveira has clearly shown in the past. And even though he has a bad chin, I think he's going to be able to keep him at range, use good lateral footwork, and use the leg kicks. Not just leg kicks, but he has a really good kicking arsenal in general. He really has a bit of a kickboxing style. And with that being said, I also do think that he has good visuals, good, what's the word I'm looking for? He has like a good he has the eyes to see like every shot coming for the most part, unless it's like a super fast pace, long rangy guy like a Daniel Marcos or a David Martinez. Although David isn't the most long rangy, but you get what I'm saying. If they have like a really solid attribute, Luan does not. He has good reflexes, I think is the word I'm looking for. So I'm gonna say he has the reflexes enough to counter in the pocket and exit with some solid kicking to the body and to the legs and sometimes upstairs. So I'm going to say 29-28 because he'll probably get taken down in the first and lose that one. Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Julia Pilastri. I'm going with Julia Pilastri by 29-28 decision. I think that people are certainly overrating her. She should not be a 5 to, like, I guess 5 to 1 you'd call it, but, like minus 500 to plus 400. That should not be the case here because Karolina is a really crafty vet. She has a really good uppercut. When you allow her to snowball the pressure, she keeps it going. Fortunately for the opponents of Carolina, they have been able to figure that out, and they pour it on for the most part in the first round, and don't let her go. Don't let her keep going. They don't let her momentum keep going. Where Julia Pilastri had a really close fight with a Lupita Godinez, who now she beat Jessica Andrade, who is a former champ. She really showed and displayed a really good boxing technique that I haven't seen from her up until that point. She did show some decent boxing against Julia Pilastri, but she was losing that third round against Julia. And that was because in the first two rounds she was able to take her down and pretty much dominate from there. But in the third round, she just not only did she gas, but also she just wasn't able to get the takedowns. And due to that, she wasn't the superior striker. So Julia Palestri showing some really good hands against a now top 10, I think maybe even top 5, Lupita Godinez is really, really impressive. For her to show some really good straight punches, some 1-2s up the middle, it's pretty good because Julia, I really think that she's going to be able to put the pressure on and keep a pretty consistent. I think aside from maybe the third round where she pours it on a little too much and Carolina is able to find a few solid uppercuts, maybe one even dropping Julia, showing her last, um, vintage Carolina one last time in the third round. I think that she's going to retire with this loss. 29-28 rounds 1 and 2. I think that opposed to Lupita Godina, she's going to start off more strong, will Julia. And Lucas Rocha versus Stuart Nicol. Lucas has a really good experience advantage here, having a 17-2 record compared to pretty much half that in Stuart Nicol's record. And it's certainly something. Did I say that? Did I say that Stuart Nicol was the one with 17-2 record? I don't know. Either way, Stewart does not have the same experience, but he was getting guillotined by Jesus Aguilar, who has a really good guillotine. And even though he's one of the few that got submitted from the guillotine of a Jesus Aguilar that's actually in the UFC, he did come in short notice against that Jesus Aguilar, or it might have been the other way around. Jesus came in short notice, but either way, it was a complete different stylistical matchup from the original opponent that he was getting. I'm like 90% sure on that. And Stuart Nicol has shown a really good grappling game, a really good striking game. Even his boxing, especially, he has some kind of tapping leg kicks. Sometimes, occasionally, he might throw a teep, but for the most part, it's the boxing, and sometimes he'll shoot some good double legs. Lucas Rocha, he shown like in his record that he's also beating some really good records while also maintaining a really solid record. So that shows a really good experience at such a young age. But the height and reach disadvantage also is going to play a big factor in this fight. While Lucas Rocha, I don't think is going to have the finishing ability now that he's in the UFC. And he got finished himself, I believe, by a rear naked choke or a technical submission. Yeah, against Clayton Carpenter, who is pretty solid, but it was his first fight in the UFC, so it's not the most impressive. And with that being said, I'm going to go with Nicol by a probably 30-27. I think that Lucas Rocha shown a good record, but I think maybe those good records that he's beaten outside the UFC were kind of cans. Maybe they got some guys that were super cans and they were getting their high level records built up based on those guys. Irina Alexeyeva, the Russian Ronda, aside from looks, she does not look or a fight like Ronda. She looks like her. She looks like how I'd imagine a Russian Ronda would look like, but she does not fight like her. And Bia Mesquia. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that worries me about this is, well, obviously the odds. I don't think a debutant should be that high in the odds, but it's the 5-0 record. It's that she's only had 5 fights in the UFC, while I think everybody else on the card has had more fights than her. So it's certainly a worry going into this. But she does have the slight reach advantage. The height is certainly something to worry about because height is a neglected advantage that people actually don't look to very often these days. But I'm going to say, because most people are saying that she's got a submission chance, I'm going to go with submission on this because I feel like this is a Brazil card. There's going to be a lot more submissions. I'm going to say round 1 just because. But look, she could get fraud checked in round 2 and 3 because of the grittiness of a Irena. She's always in there. She's always game. She just doesn't have the technique really down there. Vitor Prechnio and Thomas Peterson. I'm going with Vitor by second round submission as well. I think that Thomas Peterson is going to hang in there in the first round. The only thing that I worry about here is Thomas Peterson could blob his way to a really solid decision because Thomas Peterson hasn't been taken down yet. He has that weight advantage. Well, no, he actually doesn't, but he has that blob advantage. Maybe that blob advantage will give him that strength. But Vitor Prechnio, he might look a little slower on the feet as opposed to his older fights because he's building into this weight class more. He doesn't necessarily have the lighter man skill as much now. I don't know if we can say that for sure. Maybe he's going to be fighting a little more plotty, a little more slow. But he is a slightly taller guy. He has a really solid reach advantage. And so if it does end up being striking, like you saw Shamil Gaziev was actually able to really do some good things against Thomas Peterson on the feet. He actually knocked him out with, I believe it was a straight right. Yeah, right hook actually. And so Vitor Prachnio, he does go to the hooks a lot. Now he does get countered. You saw against Dustin Jacoby with just like a straight right, I think it was. But I don't think Thomas Peterson has that speed, and he certainly doesn't have that kickboxing background that Dustin Jacoby has. So I don't think he's going to be able to counter the hooks. And the hook is a weakness in Thomas Peterson's game, if I could say that right. My goodness, I feel like I say that in every video, but it's like there's always some moment where I just stumble because of my speed. But yeah, I think Thomas Peterson, he'll get dropped and subbed. I pretty much agree with Weasel on that one. Though I didn't just copy his pick. I was actually considering picking Thomas Peterson, but I watched some tape. Clayton Carpenter, Jafel Fieldho. I'm going with Clayton Carpenter. I'll go with a decision. Jeffel has really, really good submissions. However, in the second and third round, you could see him gas against anybody that's really solid that'll take you to decision, like a Tagir Ulanbekov, like a almost a Muhammad Mokayev. He actually finished Jeffel Filho because he was able to capitalize on the gassing from Jeffel Filho that no other was able to do so. And a Alan Nascimento, I definitely wasn't going to remember his name. He's kind of forgettable. But these guys that are slightly or maybe on par in the grappling, but he's a little better in the submission game early, but they have slightly better gas tanks. These guys are able to actually outlast him to a 29-28 decision. And I feel like it's a similar situation with Clayton Carpenter, where Jeff Fielho is really good, no question. But I just realized I'll take an underdog here. This is a pretty solid pick here. It was actually evens a couple days ago, I'm pretty sure, but I'll take this as a solid underdog. Clayton Carpenter is younger. He's getting into his prime. He had that experience fighting Tagir Ulanbekov more recently. I believe he fought more recently too in that aspect. Or no, actually, no, I'm wrong in that. But I just think that he's a better wrestle boxer. And Jeff Fielho, I think he's quite slow in the striking. He's shown some good technique, but he definitely gasses trying to go for certain submissions early on. So I think a 29-28 for Carpenter is fair. Lucas Almeida versus Michael Aswell. I'm really surprised Weasel, for example. I know I keep, in this video, on the last one, I keep like almost arguably hating on the Weasel, but I mean, he deserves in this one. I don't understand how it could be a 70-30 in favor of Michael Aswell in this prediction here. Like, he's so confident. I think that Michael Aswell is certainly going to be the better grappler and arguably the better boxer. But Lucas Almeida has shown a really good power against Timmy Kwamba. Like, he knocked, where is he? Yeah, it was this one. I know that Timmy Kwamba isn't the most high level, but he was knocking him down like all over the place. It was absolutely amazing to watch from him, the amount of sheer power he had. It's just that he doesn't have the best timing with his hands, especially if you're a Danny Silva or especially an Andre Fili who's able to take you out on short notice. And I think that the experience I'll lean on here, even though I was relying on the age as a factor for some other opponents, it was because they were closer to their prime. I think Michael Aswell, he's a bit too young to be in the UFC. He's losing against guys that are pretty much bottom of the barrel in lightweight, Bogdan Grad and Belagioki, who themselves are grapplers, and if he's getting taken down by kind of mid-grapplers in his own right, it's definitely not impressive. So I don't think he's going to be able to impose his will in the grappling too much, and I think that Almeida, with the reach advantage, with the pretty solid height advantage, is going to be able to limit his takedowns with some solid knees up the middle, some hooks that are going to get around the guard, and a couple of jabs and 1-2s. He does have a good kicking game, but he doesn't rely on it too much. And even the size advantage, like against Timmy Kwamba, I know Timmy Kwamba is a very small featherweight or lightweight. I'm pretty sure featherweight he fights. Yeah, this is a featherweight bout as well. Michael Aswell, Bogdan Grad and Belagioki, I'm pretty sure are lightweight. So the fact that he's moving down in featherweight, I don't know if that's a good decision. I think that's not going to help his chin. I don't think that's going to help his grappling ability because he's going to be going up against lighter man skill, faster, Speedy Gonzalez, Lucas Almeida. But yeah, I'm going with Lucas. Ricardo Ramos, Khan Ofli. I think there was something else I was going to say on that fight, but I forget. Khan Ofli, Ricardo Ramos. I'm going with Ricardo Ramos. I do think that Khan Ofli is a kind of okay underdog, but I'm going with a round 2 KO for Ricardo Ramos. Khan Ofli, he is basically just a plotty boxer. Or I guess Muay Thai. He kind of more feels like a Muay Thai fighter. He trains at City Kickboxing, I know that, but he really feels more like a kick or Muay Thai guy, which is similar to, kickboxing anyway, but he does implement some elbows in close. He does try to go for certain sweeps, kind of occasionally in older fights, but he's a little too aggressive. I think that Ricardo Ramos having one of the best spinning elbows in the game. I think that I mean, especially since you've seen the spinning back elbow really limit these Muay Thai slash boxing types that try to use their fancy footwork to get inside, get in close in the pocket, and they just get absolutely starched by these super fast, athletic spinning elbows. And Ricardo Ramos doesn't really have a whole lot else. He does have an okay 1-2. He does kind of have some okay leg kicks, and even the takedowns are there, but he gets submitted, which is quite worrying. Not against Canofli, though, because he's not really a submission threat. He more is a striker. So, with that being said, I really don't see a whole lot of path to victory here. He could just out-technique him with some solid hooks, but I think that Ricardo Ramos is going to be able to time those hooks. Like similar to a Mayron Santos, where even though it was a counter left hook, it was a it was based on the fact that Khan Ofli was pressuring unintelligently to the point that he was just looking for a KO pretty much without much intelligent defense there. And Ricardo Ramos is still young, so he's not even in his prime, arguably. Janata Denise, Mario Pinto. I am going with Janata Denise by another second round KO. And the reason is because I think that Janata Deniz, he really wears on his opponents. He has really good leg kicks. We saw that in pretty much all of his opponents. I mean, against the short notice, Goober or Goobies, what's the guy's nickname? No, wait. Alvin. It was like Alvin Goober Hines or Alvin Goonie. I don't know, something like that. He was showing a really good leg kick game. He was showing really good head movement, really good. Basically, he was showing some really solid boxing with the kicks. So he set up the boxing with the kicks, and then he decided to just let go. There were certain moments where the takedowns are worrying, but Mario Pinto hasn't shown a takedown game. People are relying on that. People are saying, "Oh, if it gets there, Mario's gonna have the advantage." Does he though? We haven't seen him there for the most part. I mean, yeah, he kind of had to show that against Austin Lane, but he was getting pieced up on the feet. So if Jonathan Denise plays an intelligent grappling game, and Marcin Tybura, mind you, is actually a really lethal grappler. He's super underrated in that regard. Is super underrated in that regard. It's just that he went up against the Croatian sensation Ante Delija. Okay, but back to my point, like he's a really brutal grappler if he actually lets his hands go, if he actually lets his elbows go on top. And Jonathan Denise against Carl Williams. Carl Williams was shooting takedowns. I'm so sick of this idea that he wasn't. It's just that he feared was coming back at him. He was fearing the uppercut, which Jonathan Denise has a really good uppercut. Mario Pinto isn't actually that much taller, longer, or rangier. They're about the same. In fact, the reach advantage goes to Jonathan Denise only slightly, but people act like he's the much more faster, longer, sharper guy. Okay, Weasel, we get it. You like the glaze over here against these 10-0 guys, but like Marcin Tybura is top 10 material. Mario Pinto, we don't know that yet. He struggled heavily in the first round, almost got 10-8'd against Austin Lane, and then he just had a really good counter hook, which was really good. But let's not act like this is some freaking, I mean, maybe we should act like this is a freaking fraud check. What's the guy's name? Maybe we should act like this is that one bronze medalist karate guy. I can't believe I'm forgetting the name. The Cuban guy. You guys know who I'm talking about. But let's not act like this is some actual real prospect. We should act like this is one of these, long rangey guys that's basically hyped up because he has attributes. Like that's pretty much all he is. Man, I cannot forget the freaking or can't remember the freaking guy that man, what's the people were calling him the next Francis Ngannou. I can't believe the guy I'm forgetting. Or I can't believe I'm forgetting that guy. Man, I'm stumbling and bumbling all over the place with my words at the moment. See, let's just move on. This freaking name is passing me by and it's frustrating. Second round KO. He's going to set up the KO with some leg kicks, then use some fancy head movement with when he kind of is slowing down Mario Pinto. The leg kicks are slowing him down. He works to the body a little bit, then comes upstairs with the uppercut and overhand right KOs Mario Pinto. Vicente Luque, Joel Alvarez. Is this really even a question? First round KO, Joel Alvarez. He might get a submission. He actually does have a certain opportunity to do so. But Vicente Luque, He's been getting chinier and chinier. He showed some solid hands against a Kevin Holland that looked very bad in the feet. I don't know what's happening with Kevin Holland. He's looking better on the ground, but worse in the feet lately. It's kind of weird. But Joel Alvarez also has some really good defensive submissions. On the ground, it's a little worrying, but you're going up against Arman Sarukian, like one of the most lethal ground and pound grapplers, who also has an okay submission game as well and really good takedowns. He is one of the best traditional wrestlers in the division. And he's moving up to welterweight, which means he's going to have that lighterman skill, lighterman speed, where Kevin Holland was kind of just Yuri Prohaska maxing against Vicente Luque. He really was. Like the way he grabbed that collar tie and he got countered for it, that was some Khalil Roundtree, Yuri Prohaska type stuff. And he's closer to his prime. He's 32. That's, in my opinion, probably in the lower weight classes, the closest to the prime you'll get. Maybe 33, but, Vicente Luque is more closer to 34 than he is fully 33. He has a slight reach disadvantage, slight height disadvantage. I know it says 6'3", but let's be honest, Joel Alvarez is more like a tall 6'1". If you actually look in the weigh-ins, either Vicente Luque is more like 6 foot, or Joel Alvarez is more like tall 6'1". Either way, these attributes are there. Joel Alvarez has a nasty 1-2. He has some really solid lead hooks. He has a nice stabbing teep kicks, pretty good leg kicks, especially the calf kick he's been going to recently. Amazing knees, especially in the clinch. You saw that brutally against a Elvis Brenner. And I say all that to say, I think that even the submission's there because you saw in the guillotine that was such a beautiful finish against a Drakkar Klose. You even saw in the guillotine he had against Drakkar Klose. He was like pounding away while having the guillotine. That was like half a guillotine submission, half a freaking ground and pound esque up against the fence, brutal TKO. So definitely. So many ways to win this fight. I think Vicente Luque, the most he can do to win this fight is lay and pray like he did against Rafael dos Santos to win a boring 40, 49, 46, 48, 47, 48, 47 type of decision, except it's a 3-rounder, so he won't have as much opportunities to, you know, slow down Joel Alvarez. He has more time to work, basically, Joel Alvarez, because he seems like a guy that gasses later on. Davison Figueiredo, Montel Jackson. This is actually a certainly tough fight to predict, but I'm going with Damon Jackson via a first round KO. I think that Davison Figueiredo setups and the striking has, especially going up against these taller, longer, rangier guys, has lately been super, super predictable. Against Petr Yan, he was having some success. There were certainly close rounds, even though it was a dominant fight, 50-45. Almost every single one of those rounds were still competitive. The problem is Montel Jackson is 3 inches taller than Petr Yan. I believe he has a 4-inch reach advantage over a Petr Yan. Like, this is some Conor McGregor type of stuff. Like, we can talk about how maybe he's not the most technical in the striking or the grappling or the clinch. Although in the striking, I changed my mind. He is certainly very technical. I didn't mean to say striking, but we could say that he's certainly not the most technical. But 75 inches of reach, 75 and a half. That's like some Conor McGregor type of stuff because Conor was like at featherweight, 74 inches of reach. That was like unheard of. And you have going up against 68 inches of reach. I think it's going to be so hard for Davison Figueiredo to do that thing where he's kind of like a Joe Pyfer where he's feeling out with his lead hand. He's prodding with his lead hand, trying to measure distance. And I think that's going to be so hard to measure for the right hand because Montel Jackson's already hitting you with the jab and the 1-2. And he's measuring with the leg kicks even. He's feinting a lot. Only thing is he's very whatever in the grappling, in the clinch especially. He kind of just lets you stall there. So I could see Davison Figueiredo stall to a decision 29-28 with the grappling. I can even see a 30-27. But I do think that Montel Jackson does have some solid submission defense. And so for that reason, I think I'm going to lean on the maybe strength advantage in the clinch, especially since he's coming up from featherweight. Like, we can talk about like what Weasel's doing. Bro, I just freaking hate watching Weasel at this point. We can talk about the fact that he's gone up against really good guys and beat them at times, like a freaking Brandon Moreno. But this is bantamweight. Like, what are you saying, Weasel? Like, Brandon Moreno is like a medium at best sized flyweight, whereas Montel Jackson is a massive bantamweight. He could certainly make featherweight someday. Oh, and he probably will, I think. But I'm going with first round KO for Montel Jackson. His hands are huge, which is going to be easier for him to be able to hit the target. Mateusz Gamrot and Charles Oliveira. I'm going with a Charles Oliveira second round submission. I think that Mateusz Gamrot is going to implement a very fast, Speedy Gonzalez striking game. I think that his grappling is going to be interesting. I really don't know how this is going to play out. I think that Mateusz Gamrot is going to certainly um, be on top for quite a bit in the first round. Once he tries to like fake with the 1-2, that's something that he's done in the past. He fakes with the 1-2. He has a really sneaky overhand right that he does, or a right hook even, where he like shows the one with the jab, and then he comes super fast with the backhand, and it's super fast. We saw it against this one blonde guy. I can't believe I'm forgetting. It was super far back in his career. He knocked him out with a 1-2, and then he just followed up with a few ground and pound shots. With the speed, I could totally see him actually countering Charles Oliveira because his defense is super worrying. It's not necessarily the chin, it's the defense, let's be honest. Charles Oliveira, he does have a really nice tight high guard, but when he's coming forward, when he's crashing in the pocket, um, he does have a tendency to let his hands go low a little bit, and he he's not going to want to be fighting in the pocket too much unless Mateusz Gamrot is on the back foot. If he's on the back foot, if he's able to put him on the back foot, I see this on the feet being a super easy fight for Charles Oliveira. It's ultimately who's on the front foot, I feel, in this fight. And Mateusz Gamrot on the front foot, he's going to be a nightmare showing the 1-2, possibly rocking Charles Oliveira because he doesn't have the best defense. And let's be honest, he doesn't have the best chin, but it's not because he's been knocked out left and right. It's just that he gets dropped a lot, let's be honest. That's just what it is. He's never had a great chin. And Mateusz Gamrot, he is really good on top. He has really good top pressure. The double legs he gets, the single legs, he's able to stick to you like glue. But Charles Oliveira, he has such a nasty guillotine. The fact that a Dan Hooker was almost able to get one on him shows to me, and it wasn't like super close, but it was close. And it shows to me like with Dan Hooker not being the greatest submission guy, he's threatened with guillotines before, but it shows like Charles Oliveira is going to snatch that up and eat that chin, eat that neck for breakfast. Okay, that's just his specialty. He gets that rear naked choke. He gets that guillotine with ease. I think that on the bottom, Mateusz Gamrot can hit him with some okay ground and pound, but if he gives Charles Oliveira a slight enough opening, I think he's going to eat up that neck all day. And I think that Mateusz Gamrot, he's very aware with these submission threats, but it's not going to be enough. I think that Charles Oliveira is too quick with them. Arman Tsarukyan was just barely surviving, and it was mostly either due to the bell or due to his shorts falling. I did think that, I think that he won the fight, Arman, but rewatching, I did like defend Arman for the longest time before everybody started coming around to him because they started hate watching Ilia Topuria and liking Arman only for that reason. But I was a fan of his, and I did argue to death that he was the rightful winner and that these submissions weren't a threat from Charles. But in hindsight, no, they actually were. Let's be honest. If and MHA did actually, I'll be honest. In this point, MHA did help me see the light in this topic or discussion, whatever you want to call it. The shorts fell. That's pretty much the only reason why Charles Oliveira grip on the choke wasn't all there, because his legs weren't able to hold tightly with the triangle that he had there around the hips of Arman Tsarukyan, and due to that, Arman Tsarukyan was able to kick free. And with the last submission in the fight, even though he fell flat, and he argued that he was actually just doing that to contain the air within his lungs more, let's be honest, that was a very tight submission. It made it a very close round, and if he didn't have the last 10 seconds buzzer there, he probably would have tapped that or just gone out completely. We don't know that because even though he could say all he wants that he was fine and he looked fine right after, we don't really know. We didn't see how tight, how red his face was just only after the fact we saw. So I think that he has really tight submissions, and I think that Arman Tsarukyan has better shots. He has better double legs. So Mateusz Gamrot, if he shoots a double leg, I could totally see him snatching up that neck. And even if he's on bottom and he works his way up top, I could see maybe in a scramble he gets to the back, gets the rear naked choke, or Mateusz Gamrot, he sort of exposes the neck on a single leg, and Charles Oliveira jumps it, goes on into in bottom, but the choke is too tight, so it doesn't matter that he's on bottom, and he gets it. Maybe triangle even, but I'd say guillotine or rear naked is the most possible here. So thank you so much for watching. These are my UFC Rio Charles Oliveira versus Mateusz Gamrot fight card predictions. Man, what a card it'll be. I'm so hyped. Thank you so much for watching. Mask of MMA out. Like, comment, subscribe.